build one up around the island. It's not as well supported as this one. Both claim documentation to support their side, but who knows? We'll never know. So, October 12th, Carleton is not pleased to discover that Arnold had escaped. There was still a bunch of heavy fog. So Arnold and his guys spotted a ship, and they started firing on it until the fog lifted, and they realized that their ship wasn't a ship at all. It was a rock. Right, whoops, right there. Carleton's rock, Carleton's prize, right there. So here's the end of Valcour Island, and there's what they thought was a ship hiding behind Providence Island. And that's what it looks like today. And if you take a look at this, you can see stains. Those are rust marks. And the locals will tell you that that's because there's an awful lot of iron oxide in those rocks because of they get fired on by the British. So Arnold beat feet to the south. Carleton caught up with him at Split Rock on the New York shore. That's about 25 miles south of where the battle took place. So Arnold sent Congress in Washington out to delay him a little bit. Washington was quickly overwhelmed and struck colors and surrendered. Congress beat feet and joined Arnold. Basically what they did was there's a small bay just south of what is now Button Bay, and it's very shallow. That's a good thing because Arnold's fleet could get in there, Carleton's could not. So they couldn't chase him to the beach. So that gave Arnold time to beach his boats, strip them, set them on fire. And it's noteworthy to note that they did set the boats on fire with the flag still flying. And then they retreated to Crown Point. Now Crown Point is on the New York side, so that means they had to cross the lake at some point, but they did that. The direct distance from Arnold Bay is about 14 miles. So when I say direct distance, that's as the crow flies, not as you marched or as whatever. So what Arnold did is he burned everything that was there. So all the buildings, any stores that they couldn't take or use, they burned them. And then they went down to Ticonderoga, and they carried wounded on the sails that they had salvaged. So on October 20th, Carleton reached the remains at Fort Crown Point. Problem: snow was falling and the weather was deteriorating rapidly. The fort had been totally destroyed, so it was of no use and no shelter as far as the British were concerned. And Carleton wasn't particularly stupid. He knew that the Lake Champlain freezes north to south. North is a lot colder, so it freezes up there first. Well, where was his home port? Top of the lake, 100 miles away. So knowing that, he decided that he was going to head home, and he's going to wait out the winter there and then resume his advance in the spring. So if you look at that from the surface, it looks like Arnold's fleet was decimated in Valcour Island battle, decisively lost. True. But General Carleton did not succeed in hooking up with General Howe, did not succeed in cutting New England off from the rest of the colonies. And from that perspective, the mission statement, which was stop Carleton from making this cut, that was a success. So Arnold brought significant time to build up American forces. Now, I told you that Saratoga was going to come into this, and here's where that happened. The next year, the British were soundly defeated at Saratoga. They would not have been able to do that without the time that Arnold bought them. So from that perspective, it was very important because the French entered the war at that point supporting the Americans. But it was the battle at Saratoga which convinced the French that the Americans really were going to do this. That was very decisive. So for those of you who might get to Washington Smithsonian Institute, this is the USS Philadelphia as it sits today. And for those of you who might like to visit the Maritime Museum, the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum in Vermont. This is the Philadelphia 2, an exact replica built to the plans pulled right out of the Smithsonian for the Philadelphia. That's what she looks like. So that's it. Any questions?
Yeah. That cannon, was that a 6-pounder on the...
I'm sorry?
The cannon on the bow, was that a 6-pounder?
I do not know exactly what that is.
I think that's the only one
But I do have some information in there that would probably, it's probably a 6-pounder. It's either a 6 or an 8, and I could look it up and let you know.
Okay.
Anything else?
The Philadelphia later was, a new Philadelphia was lost in Tripoli Harbor, and it's still there for us to actually drop archaeologists, underwater archaeologists on it. We could bring up some of the cannons and stuff. It was a sister ship to the USS Constitution, but it was a later Philadelphia.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, our principal speaker today is David Bramley, and David is the author of a book that's based on a true story, and it goes back, did we say 6 or 7 generations?
7.
It goes back 7 generations to a Bramley that was involved in Washington's guns. And David, you want to come forward and just tell us what you want to tell us?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. It was...
Oh, and by the way, he's not a member of the SAR, but he's getting ready to fill out his application.
Correct. Correct. So we had... I live in Dunedin, so it was Mardi Gras last night, so I'm lucky to be here at all. We had... so when I'm talking about the sons of the American Revolution, about, the Revolutionary War, it's like talking about Einstein about physics. You already know it all. This book began, my father and my aunt did a lot of genealogical research in our family. And they came upon this story of a relative who reported directly to George Washington, who in the middle of winter took guns down the Hudson River. And that just seemed incredible to me. And, I needed to dig in my closet to find my ski jacket to walk the dog in the wintertime, and I had a relative doing that kind of thing. So I didn't want that. I just wanted to explore it more. According to Ancestry.com, I'm actually the 4th great-grandson, or 7 generations. My father and aunt did this research, and they found William Bramley. William Bramley, and the name is spelled differently. There's B-L-E-E, there's B. Bramble, like the bush. But all generations since him have spelled it with the L-E-Y that my family uses. In March of 1777 and through September of 1779, William Bramley served in the American Army. The National Archives have record of it and actually had his sworn testimony as to what he did with the war. He was given an opportunity to testify as to his service during the war in pursuit of a pension. The state of New York offered a pension to those, by that time, few surviving living soldiers. And so he had a chance to apply for it. And we have that handwritten record. It's handwritten, there's no punctuation. It's in that flowery style with, it's like ancient Greece. There's no punctuation at all. You can do your sentence any way you want. But it was so interesting to touch on items of such a historical significance. The main thing was to me, I didn't want it to be lost to my family. I have a son, I have three grandchildren, and it was important to me that story not just get lost. And because again, I had it for 20 years. It was like, oh, I'm going to write a book about that. Because when you read it, it reads like a book. It's so exciting, and the things that happen were so neat. And so finally, I did write the book. And it's not, it's not the greatest novel ever written, and it was not meant to be. But it does preserve this historical record. So in 1832, William Bramley personally appeared by the judges at Common Pleas in New York, and he did apply for the pension. He was accompanied by his pastor, a man named David Hollister, and Erastus Root. Erastus Root was quite a character and an amazing person in early New York State politics. He was elected to Congress on 4 separate occasions. In between terms in Congress, he served in the state assembly. He was a Jacksonian, he was a Whig, he was a Democratic Republican. So just as those parties flowed from one to the other, he went with them. And then he was also a major general in the New York State Militia as well. And they had to be present. So they went to Albany with him and testified that he had been involved in the war, that he walked with a limp due to an injury in the war. So William Bramley enlisted as a private in the New York State Militia in the 3rd Regiment of the Albany County Militia. And he was transferred into the Carpentry Corps. Jacob Van Dusen has a great historical record. He was the head of the Carpenters Corps. They built barracks. He was involved with a number of building projects during the war. William was originally assigned to Fort Miller in New York, where he made scows. And scows are shallow, made for shallow water, but they are sailing vessels with very low beam, and they can go into, they're specifically made for shallow waters. And William grew up in England, in Reading, England, and that's on the Thames and on the Kennet and Avon canals. And so he would have seen these scows his whole life and been familiar with their construction. Excuse me. So he immediately, his first job was building scows, and then he was transferred to Fort Edwards, where he built more scows. At the time he was at Fort Edwards was the McRae Massacre. At or around that time, the McRae Massacre occurred. If you're not familiar with that, Presbyterian clergy's daughter with bright flaming red hair was kidnapped and then killed, and then scalped. And her scalp was purchased by General Burgoyne as part of a pact that he had made with the Native Americans in that time at that area. And times were brutal then, and life was very harsh then, but even still, this was considered to be a very vicious act. And in that incident, the McRae Massacre made every